Fear is a very powerful emotion on the human system. The common narrative with fear is that it creates distance between people. But in reality, the energetic bond you have with people you fear is way stronger than the distance you have with them. Sometimes even stronger than the bond you have with people you think you love. Now, I say this with caution because the human emotion is essentially generated by the person that's experiencing the emotion, although there may be external situations to trigger these emotions. So, the love or fear you experience is not necessarily because you love someone or fear someone else. It is simply because you're generating love or fear in the specific moment you're experiencing them. Now, does that mean that other people or external situations have nothing at all to do with our emotions? No, that's not what it means. You see, other people or external situations may serve as triggers to trigger these emotions. But that's only because your mind has associated those people and external situations with these emotions. So those people and external situations become triggers to trigger these emotions. But it's important to understand that there are always two choices available to us, even in the presence of the trigger. You could choose to generate the emotion or not to generate the emotion. Unfortunately, though, these choices are not going to be conscious in most cases, especially in a spiritual attack situation like gang stalking. Once the trigger is displayed to the target, the mind is unconsciously triggered to create fear based thoughts. These thoughts will automatically send signals to the cells in your body to generate fear. This is the psychology that the attacker is using in gang stalking to program fear into the mind of the target and establish fear triggers at the same time. Now, fear and fear triggers are psychological conditioning. The goal of the attacker with fear triggers is to condition your subconscious mind to automatically generate fear based thoughts when certain people, places, situations, or activities are displayed to you. Imagine being in a situation where you are being constantly endangered by motorcycles and vehicles. It's not uncommon for you to become terrified by witnessing an accident scene or hearing the sound of a motorcycle because the subconscious mind is going to start associating those activities with danger. This is an example strategy of the attacker in gang stalking. First, they create a situation that constantly endangers you, like the example I just mentioned, and then surrounds you with activities that constantly reminds you of that dangerous situation. Surrounding you with these activities is how they enforce the fear patterns that are being established in your mind. This is how subconscious programming is done. Now, for most people, once the attacker puts them through these activities for long enough, they become terrified of the attacker. And so the attacker and these activities now become fear triggers. Now remember, all of this conditioning is done at a subconscious level. So what's going to start happening to the target is that every time they see the attacker, fear takes over them. Sometimes the target really don't want to be afraid, but they just can't help it. The subconscious mind has already been programmed to associate the attacker with danger. And so by seeing the attacker, the mind is unconsciously triggered to create fear based thoughts. These fear based thoughts will automatically send signals to the cells in your body to generate fear. That is how the attacker is able to trap the target in a constant loop of fear. Watch secret number 6 to learn more about that concept. Now, how do we deal with fear in a spiritual attack situation like gang stalking? Well, that's what challenging fear triggers is all about. You see, in a gang stalking attack, the attacker is taking advantage of every opportunity to program fear into the mind of the target. And in my experience, the best way to deal with a situation like this is to develop a strategy that allows you to actively override these fear patterns in real time. And the good news is, the mechanism to develop this strategy is right there inside of you. It has always been. Now it's about time to activate this mechanism and use it to transform your fears into your power. See, there are always two choices available to us whenever we come in contact with fear. The most common one, of course, is to run away, which is the flight instinct. Part of the reasons why we choose this flight mechanism is due to the human evolution process. Humans, for a very long time, have used this flight mechanism for survival, and so it has become the predominant response to fear in most humans. But then there's always the other option, which is the fight instinct. This is the option that you have to consciously activate and use in a gang stalking attack. And I use the word consciously on purpose because you have to literally become conscious that you're in a spiritual warfare and then activate this fight mechanism that lies asleep inside of you. Now, fight in this sense does not necessarily mean getting involved in a physical fight with another person, although that could also be possible if need be. This kind of fight is more so about standing your grounds against the bullies and all of the activities they are using to bully you. Every time you become terrified of a person, place, situation, or activity and choose to run away, you're conditioning your mind to associate those activities with danger. And so naturally, you will become terrified and run away again the next time they repeat themselves in the future. On the other hand, every time you stand your grounds against activities that try to project fear onto you, you're conditioning your mind to disassociate those activities from danger. And so naturally, you will be more stable and comfortable around those activities the next time they repeat themselves in the future. Rewiring your mind to override all of these unconscious fear patterns is going to take a process because the fear you're dealing with has multiple dimensions to it. Some of it was inherited from past generations in your lineage, and some of it was programmed into your mind since childhood. So, for most of your life, the false matrix has been using these fear strategies to establish unconscious fear patterns in your mind. You're just starting to perceive it now, but if you sit down and take an inventory of your life, you will realize that these lower nature entities have been performing these sinister activities around you for most of your life. Now that you're becoming aware of these activities, here's what you need to understand. Every time you find yourself in a situation that frightens you, there's only one way to instruct the mind to disassociate that activity from danger. That is to resist the urge of running from the activity. Because the moment you run from the activity, the mind at a subconscious level will automatically associate it with danger. That is how unconscious fear patterns are established over time. By facing the situation and not running from it, you're conditioning the mind at a subconscious level to disassociate those activities from danger. So the mind knows next time not to create fear based thoughts around those activities. That is how you gradually override these unconscious fear patterns. So by constantly challenging these fear triggers, you will eventually arrive at a place where these activities become ineffective against you. This is shadow work at its finest, and this is a practical example of the transmutation of fear. This is how you transform your fears into your power. This is one of the greatest lessons you can learn as a target of gang stalking.